welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited for you to meet my dear friend, Melissa Robinette. She is out of South Carolina, and she's just doing a remarkable job as a solo shop in a school district of 11,000. We talk a lot today, how she handles social media for her district, how she took a scary moment and went in with her superintendent and gave him some news and got a very surprising response. This is a story you're not going to forget. And then we're going to dive deep into a communications audit and what that is. Why you shouldn't be afraid of it, and kind of what some of those deliverables are, really helping prioritize the work that needs to get done. Melissa is also part of our amazing membership group, which is just a community of social media storytellers from all across the country. She's going to share just a minute about how that's helped her in her role. But I just want to tell you, as of today, if you're listening to this live, each year inside the membership group, so you don't pay extra, but it's inside the membership group, we go through our social media boot camp, which is a 4-week program where we really break down the basics of what makes social media work. And whether you've been doing social media for 1 month or 3 months or 10 years, there's always some things, once you re-examine what you're doing for social media, there's some things you need to work on. And I'm really excited because that boot camp starts this week. It actually starts November 14th. We record all of them. So anytime you join in, you are going to get access to the last recorded social media boot camp, which has all the latest and greatest changes, where we're talking about, what's working now on Facebook and Meta, and how to do Meta Business Manager, and breaking down all of the systems that are going to help you be effective with social media. But you can join the membership group now. You can check out socialschool4edu.com, and you can get all the details over there on my website. There's a reason why we have over 400 schools that are part of that community, because it really does help your social media stand out, give you the basics, help you have time for all of the other things that you need to do besides social media. Really helps make social media much easier. So jump on in. But now let's get to this week's K-12 PR tip. All right, today's little K-12 PR tip is all about graphics and graphic sizes. Melissa and I are actually going to talk about this a little bit later in the interview. As part of my membership program, we have this big library of Canva templates, all school-related stuff. So it's really awesome. And traditionally, we've kept those as squares because on Instagram, on the grid or on your news feed for Instagram, square is the best way to go. You're going to be able to see the whole image. Well, I teach that the grid view or your news feed for Instagram should be much more focused on images versus the graphics that you should share. And I believe that you should really create your graphics that you're going to use for Facebook. And the size requirement for Facebook is not a square. If you use a square on Facebook, it actually gives you some funky outlines in the outside to fill the space, so that it takes up the space that Facebook has, which is 940 by 788, and that's pixels. So pixel size is 940 pixels wide by 788 pixels high. I really recommend, if you're creating a graphic that you are going to end up using on social media and Facebook, if that's your primary spot, you really should make that graphic 940 by 788. I would skip using that graphic on your Instagram feed or on as a post or on your grid. But you could pull that graphic into Instagram stories or Facebook stories. No, it's not going to be vertical in nature, but it's much more forgiving if you have something that doesn't fit exactly on your story, because it's not going to be cut off. You are going to be able to see the whole thing. It just won't take the full height of your story. So I'm just trying to share some best practices. And I know that some of you really, really hate the extra border, because Facebook doesn't do a very good job either with matching the color of the border with the color of your graphic. So it really just doesn't look great. So this is a tip to help. You just make it 940 by 788 and then just skip using that graphic on your feed of your Instagram page. Stories, you can pop it up in there. Obviously, we can make Instagram reels and things like that, but that's my tip for today. Now you're going to get a lot more tips from my friend Melissa. Let's get started. I am so excited to welcome somebody that hopefully a lot of you know, but I'm lucky enough to call her friend and running mate. We've got Melissa Robinette in the house. How are you, Melissa?
Hey, Andrea, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, we're on camera and you can
Yeah,
watch us over on YouTube, but most people listen. So, Melissa, why don't you just share your background and your role as the director of public relations there in South Carolina?
sure. So it's hard to believe I have now been in this role for a decade now. Gosh, I'm aging. So I am the director of public relations for Spartanburg District 5 schools, just north of Greenville, South Carolina, in the upstate of South Carolina. For anybody who might be familiar with our area of the country, Spartanburg County is actually divided into 7 different districts. That's why I'm number 5. We're actually the third largest of the Spartanburg County districts. But I, as I said, got into this role 10 years ago. I started my journey. I was a journalism major at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs, yay! For any maybe Bulldog fans out there, started my life in journalism, thinking I was going to be the next Diane Sawyer. And I loved TV news. I was a TV news major and went on to be a reporter and anchor for about 14 years in Florida and here in South Carolina. But like so many others probably that share that story, there's a lot of us in school PR actually. I was looking to start a family with my husband, and my mom was an educator. So I had always thought about if I ever got out of television news, what would I do? And PR seemed like a natural fit. And then what were the areas that I cared about? Well, education was one of them. I was blessed enough that I knew a local superintendent. I happened to hear that he was looking for a director of public relations. The previous person in my role was moving on to do something different with the district. And so I just had a buddy that said, hey, you should apply. And I thought, it had been a long time since I had applied for anything. I had been in TV news for so long, but I thought, well, this will be a good way to get my feet wet. And then lo and behold, they offered me the job, and that was 10 years ago. And I really couldn't imagine doing anything else. As I said, and I said this in my interview, I still remember this 10 years ago, when they said, well, why would you want to work for a school district? Well, it's, as I said, my mom was a special education teacher. She went on to become an elementary school principal and just retired a few years ago. And so education was what we talked about around the dinner table. So it's really what I grew up around and what I felt like I knew. I even covered education when I was a reporter for a long time in Florida. So I felt like I was pretty well versed on the issues. And like I said, I cared about it. And I feel like we are big believers in public education. And in our family, my mother-in-law is also a retired teacher. So lots of educators around us. And I've loved every second of it for 10 years.
That's awesome. Now, Spartanburg, you're the third largest in the county, but about how many students do you have?
Sure. So we have, I like to say we're knocking on the door of 11,000 students. We're
Okay.
almost there. We almost got there this year. We are the fastest growing in Spartanburg. We actually have a lot of growth going on in my district, several schools under construction, and a huge turning point year next year because we're opening several new schools and campuses that were funded through a bond referendum that we passed several years ago. So really exciting time for Spartanburg 5.
Yeah, congratulations on passing that. And then how big is your communications department?
I am an office of one,
Okay.
still. So I'm hoping that the third time is the charm, and I can say this publicly because I'm lucky enough to have a really supportive superintendent. He believes in the communications role, but as so many people are familiar with, budgets are a fickle thing, and so I think over the last couple of years we've tried to add to my department, and things get pushed out of the budget at the last minute. So I'm hoping that after 2 years of trying that maybe this year is the charm with that, and maybe we can add on to the department, because it really is, as we are growing. It's so many of us need support in this role to do all the things that we want to do.
Yeah. And I just want to thank you for taking the time today to talk to us, because
Yeah, no problem.
I know that you are very busy, and obviously with a district that large, it can be challenging. So just can you explain how social media fits into your role?
Sure. So, I mean, it's critical. Obviously, as a department of one, it's hard to manage all of the tasks that come along with social media. I am fortunate that over the 10 years that I've been here, I've built a team around me. So I manage the district's social media accounts, obviously, and then I oversee a team which includes, point people, if you will, or social media managers at each of our 12 schools in the district. So we have 6 elementaries, 2 what we call intermediate schools, 2 middle schools, a freshman academy, and a high school. So each of those schools have social media people that have been trained by me and do a great job. And so I'm here as support to them, and then as a backup manager on their accounts. But then I also, like I said, manage the district's social media. And currently we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then YouTube as well for videos that we put out.
Okay. And we'll make sure to link out to those channels. Those folks at each site, do they get a stipend, or is it just a voluntary role, or how does that work?
Yes. So thankfully, and a couple of years ago, I presented at Inspira along with Ashley Michelle Thublin and Anissa Sullivan Jimenez. And we talked about that a lot in that session that, I was lucky enough a couple of years ago. I also manage websites as well. So I have to keep those separate. So in some cases, some of those social media managers are one and the same with website. I try not to do that too much unless I really feel confident in the person's ability. If there's somebody that's been with me for a long time and they are just really good at what they do. But usually it's 2 separate people at the school. So we started off here with website stipends. And then, word got out that we were offering those website stipends, and it's not much. But it's something, because for so long, like so many others out there in school PR, the only thing that we were paying these people with was maybe a duty that was taken off of them. They don't have to do lunch duty, or they don't have to do car line pickup or something like that. And that only lasts for so long. So we luckily were able to, several years ago, get a stipend for those website folks. And that was $500 a semester. So $1,000 a year. And then those were so successful and really showed those people that we valued their position. And it really it allowed us at least something to say, hey, are those folks doing their jobs? So those were successful. So the next year, in the next budget cycle, so this will be the second year that we've had the social media stipend in place. And it's the same thing. It's $500 a semester. I have a really basic checklist or expectation list that they have to follow, and make sure that they're doing everything on their end as far as their end of the holding up their end of the bargain. And so we check that off every semester. And like I said, they get $500 a semester for doing that role.
Yeah, that's really helpful for you to share those details with all the listeners. I know they appreciate it. And it's just so at first I thought you were going to say we didn't pay them anything more than a t-shirt, because
Oh.
sometimes we'll give out a
I like swag, but it only goes so far. I also try to do little things for them. Unfortunately, gift cards are difficult. If anybody can share my pain with like school finances, it's difficult even with gift cards nowadays. But sending them a little thank you card and like some candy. Halloween's coming up tomorrow. I usually try to send them just a little Cersei or something in district mail every now and then, just to let them know also beyond the stipend that they're doing a great job, and that I appreciate what they do.
Yeah. But I also thought it was unique. I mean, just that you took something away. So I can see where that could help for a little bit. And then eventually maybe you could work into it, but not having to do lunch duty or bus duty would in some cases be enough for somebody to maybe say, hey, I want to get involved. So that's great.
And I do know a lot of, in districts that I have friends in that haven't been able to, have a stipend for whatever reason, that can be, like you said, a nice little incentive.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk today about a communications audit that you recently went through, but before we get there, I don't know if we like have talked about everything under the sun, Melissa. But one of my favorite stories from you
Oh
is when
no, I'm
is when
scared.
no, is what your superintendent said when you were scared to deliver some news when you first got your
Oh,
job.
I thought you were going to tell when I fell this summer when we were running together, Andrea.
I
That's another story for another day, maybe another
Yes,
podcast. I was
you
like, you're going to embarrass me on the podcast.
no, I would never I'd never do that. And you were very graceful and it was hard and you survived it like a champ. You guys, I tried to catch her. Melissa's just
You
this
were such a good friend. You were
she's
such a
such
good
a little
friend.
bitty thing. And so I'm just like, I should be able to catch her, but then I'd probably fall on top of her and hurt me
Andrea and I
more.
get so caught up in conversation when we're running that I guess I just wasn't paying attention and I just bit it. And you were such a great friend and didn't laugh at all, didn't make me feel like a terrible klutz. But like I said, and maybe another story for another day, but
Yeah.
that was great fun. Oh,
Yeah.
so my story about my superintendent. So I like I said, I'm really lucky that I have I've been through now 2 bosses. We tend to keep superintendents for long. I know that in other parts of the country, maybe the tenure of superintendents may not be as long. My first boss, Dr. Turner, he had been superintendent here for 15 years. But he, before he retired several years back, but he, like I said, when I applied for the job, I knew him somewhat. I'd covered education here, so I knew him in covering his school district. And super guy. And about 2 weeks, I worked in television at the time, and about 2 weeks after he offered me the job, I was kind of caught in this little place where I was still under contract with my television station, and there was going to be a period of time before I could actually start the school district job. And I found out 2 weeks after he offered me the job, when I was still working for the television station, that I was pregnant with our first child. And I panicked. I, told my husband, what am I going to do? I was just in tears. And he said, what do you mean? What are you going to do? You're going to tell him you're pregnant. It's an exciting thing. And but I was caught in this time where I was, still working for the television station. I had about 2 months that I had to finish out my contract. So by the time I started with the district, I was knocking on the door of my first the end of my first trimester. So I started, that first day on the job, and my mom, who was still an elementary school principal at the time, called me that first day and she said, did you tell him yet? And I said, Mom, first day on the job, not going to tell him today. And then, called me on the second day. Did you tell him? No, second day, not going to tell him today either. But by day 4, I finally got up the courage to walk into Dr. Turner's office. I had a long list of things that I wanted to speak to him about, and it got down to the bottom of the list. Of course, that was the last thing that I was going to approach with him. And I said, well, about 2 weeks after you offered me this job, John, my husband, and I got a little surprise. And for those listeners who are actually watching this, his eyes got really big, and he said, and he threw up his hands and he said, that's great. And I said, what? And he said, Melissa, a baby, what a blessing. And it still brings me to tears this day. I actually told this story in his retirement dinner because I said, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. And he said, again, what a blessing. And he said, why are you confused? And I said, well, I started this job like 3 days ago, and I'm telling you, in about 6 months, I'm going to be taking an extended leave of absence. And to this day, I will never forget what he said next. And he said, Melissa, we're a school district. We're kind of in the kid business. And it was such a revelation for me and just a really eye-opening moment because it's sad to say in the industry that I was in previously, that just may not have been the response that I would have gotten immediately. And it's something that I continually, when I talk about it, I actually tell this story in a training that I do for aspiring principals with one of our state organizations, because I just like to share that story because it is a great reminder that the business that we're in and the work that we do, it is about kids and it's about families and it's about children. And it was just a great sign that I was in the right place and was doing the right thing. So thanks
Yes.
for letting me share that story.
Oh, that brings me to tears every time too. So as you were sharing, I'm just like, then you know you're in the right spot when you get a
Yeah.
response like that. And now you have two of the cutest kids
Oh,
in the
thanks.
world. And so happy for you. And I'm so happy, I know there's a lot of journalists listening because there are usually you're a teacher and then you become a school PR person or you're in journalism.
Yeah.
And that is such a high stress. I think you said if you would have told, your old boss that, it would have been like, what are you thinking? And it's all about them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's a totally different industry. And that I still have a lot of friends in media and it's changed a lot. And it's not as, it's hard to manage both and to juggle both. I think it's also, for those of us that are now in school PR and our parents, it's changed my perspective on what I do in school PR, being a parent and having two children now, because my youngest is a first grader. And so both of them are in public schools. And so being a school PR person who's also a parent, it gives you a unique view of what parents deserve and what we should be giving them as communicators working for schools.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for sharing that again. And I'm sure everybody else got goosebumps. So now we're going to transition and jump into a communications audit. And you have a lot on your plate already, Melissa, and
Yeah.
you're doing a great job, but then
Ah,
you kind of welcomed in, and I think I was there when you were talking to Ashley Michelle, who's actually been on the podcast before as well, but talking to her about this process. So can you just tell everybody that's listening, like, what is a communications audit?
Well, first, I hate the word audit. And I think I even said that to Ashley Michelle. And I say it to a lot of people when I try to describe the process. And I'm actually starting down the road of drilling this down, thanks to the friend that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, Anissa Sullivan Jimenez. She's done great work in the area of school level communications audits. And so I'm actually kind of trying to do that process as well here in my district with my schools. And I hate the word audit is what I tell them because it just sounds so, I'm not a financial person. Clearly I majored in journalism. Finance wasn't my forte. And so audit just kind of sounds like this really super scary word. But when I was thinking about preparing for this today, I was thinking, well, how else do you describe audit? And the way that I say it is it's really just an assessment. It's a look at where you're at, in this case, communication wise, what you're doing well, and then maybe what you need to work on. So that's the gist of it in a nutshell. It's really, looking at all aspects of your communication program for your school district, and then kind of nitpicking at those aspects and seeing what you got going really great for you, and then what you can work on.
Yeah, and I can imagine, and I love hanging around with people like you because you're so focused on growth mindset, and we always want to push to get better. But you're also really strapped. So I could imagine that this process could probably help identify, no, we really need this extra position, or maybe this is where we're going to help set up our priorities, which is going to help you because when you're in the work every day, it's kind of hard to take a look at for yourself, looking at doing your own assessment. You're actually getting help with it, right?
Absolutely. And that's such a great point because when you're in the thick of it, it's very hard to, step back and really, take the time to do the strategic work. But as you and I were talking right before, we started the interview, I've been slowly working towards my APR. And as part of that process, and knowing for a long time now, I mentioned I've been with this district for 10 years, knowing for a long time now that we really needed a refreshed communication plan for my school district. Well, the very first thing that you need when you start a new communication plan, or a communication plan in general, is an audit, if you will, of where you're at. So I couldn't really start that communication plan or look at that until I had a good assessment of what's going well and what's not. And in the case of my district, in my research, I wasn't able to find that we really had ever done a communication audit here with the people that held the role before me. So it was, a long time in coming, and it's like you said, it's a growth mindset thing. I think I'm always looking for ways to improve and get better, and what are we doing well, and then definitely like how can we improve.
So there's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of companies that you can partner with, and Spur even has something available. So obviously you don't know about all of those, but you went through one on your own, with Spartanburg. So can you just tell me about the process?
Sure. So I want to be, real clear. Yeah, you mentioned there's lots of options out there. In my case, because it is an expense. So for anybody that's considering going through this, obviously, I had to start planning when my district was going through the early stages of our budget process, which really starts, January through kind of mid to late March. So I knew every year when I'm looking ahead to, is there anything that I'm going to request? We have already talked about maybe a second person in my department, those kind of requests. This was something that I was aiming to do. So I knew that I had done my homework a little bit with other friends and colleagues in NSPRA that had done audits. And I knew that NSPRA, our national organization, did them. I also knew of some other groups that did them. So I kind of had to start planning, okay, and asking around how much do these things cost, and knowing what I thought was doable for my district in terms of our budget. So I had to, because we have to go through what we call quote process here. So it's not just like I can, if it reaches a certain limit, it's procurement guidelines, you have to get quotes from several different agencies. And so we did. And as you mentioned, NSPRA is a great one. There's other ones. We ended up going with CISO, who maybe your listeners are familiar with. It's some great NSPRA former kind of like powerhouses that work for CISO now. And they were a great partner, and really, I just can't speak more highly of them. They walked with me every step of the way. It really starts with a kind of an assessment of, okay, it's an information gathering stage where I sat down with them, and it felt like a 3-hour long interview. It wasn't that long, but I felt like I was in the hot seat. They made it very, very pleasant for me though. But it was a lot of questions about all different aspects of my communication program. And then they kind of did their own diving into analyzing social media and our website, and just all aspects that they had. I had to provide a lot of documentation for them, like of our current communication plan, and some other things that would help them in their assessment. And then it probably took from start to finish. I mean, we started over the summer, and I had it shortly after school began. So not even 3 months for me,
Okay.
but I do know in other, it depends on how big your district is, the scope of the communication audit that you are performing. NSPR does a pretty in-depth, large audit. I knew that for this purpose today, and this at this time in our district's place, we didn't need a huge audit of that scope where we're talking focus groups and some other things that they include. That's not to say that that won't one day be something that we might travel down the road of, but for this one, the one with CISO was a good fit for our district.
Yeah.
The more in-depth ones can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months, I'm told, but
Okay.
because again, they involve focus groups and some other more in-depth information gathering that this one didn't involve for us.
Okay. And all our listeners should have listened to Nicole and Bob just 2 weeks ago on the
Oh,
podcast.
yay. Were they talking
So
about this?
yeah, so they weren't talking about this process. They were talking all about how to take complex issues and kind of simplifying those in our communication. So that was great. But so that the process at first was information gathering,
Yes.
and then through the process and once they analyze stuff, can you just share like a few of the things, and were you surprised at anything that you needed to work on, or were you, just tell me about that.
No, they made it really easy, and I can't really say I actually have well, I'm not gonna like show every page of it. My audits right here. I was going
Okay.
there we go. But nothing really shocked me, and luckily, and it was actually Bob and Nicole that were the ones that walked me through my audit. They set you up with several team members, but it's multiple members of their team that kind of look over all the documents and things that you provide them. So it's not just those two, but they were my team leads, and so there wasn't anything that was shocking to me, and they kind of said that from the beginning with mine. They were like, you're lucky that you don't have any dumpster fires in your
Yep.
district, and there are, I mean, many districts out there, and probably several of your listeners can relate to that. We are fortunate in District 5. I'm not just say that we don't have our share of controversy or things that pop up from time to time, but for the most part, we are blessed to have a very supportive community, and we don't have a lot of things that are super controversial that pop up here. So we have a pretty steady communication program, and they said, you don't have anything that's glaring right from the start. But yeah, so they separate it into different aspects of your communication program. So I'm actually looking at my notes here because I have
Yeah.
to remind, but it's everything from, communication strategy and planning to internal communication and engagement. So, what you're doing to engage your staff and your employees, parent and family communication, external communication, and that's those people without students in your district,
Sure.
so community members, stakeholder engagement, and brand experience and reputation. So anything having to do with your district's brand, and then student enrollment, retention, and recruitment, and then employee retention and recruitment. I think that's it. So I think it was, no, actually, wait, there's one more. So it was 9 different areas, and crisis communications and preparedness was the last one. So what I loved that they did with my audit is that they broke it down in each of those 9 sections. They did what they call, and I don't know if this is unique to CISO, or if I only have this this experience with a communication audit, so I'm not sure if others do this as well, but they broke it down into what they call do now, do soon, and do later. So it was those do now topics were the things that were really important to start right away, and
Mhm.
then the do soon, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, and
Mhm.
then the do later, 6 months and beyond, even to a year and beyond, that those are not as critical to perform now. So that really for me was a helpful way of breaking it down, and not making it so, because I am a one person shop. And I think I told Bob and Nicole this many times that it can be overwhelming, to, have this dropped in your lap and feel like you want to accomplish everything right at once. But they are there on the back end. They've been just such a support for me. And so, and really made the process pleasant and not intimidating. So that was a great way to break it down, like I said, and make it like little chunks of what I could do now. And, the other stuff, like not putting so much pressure on myself to do it right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Do now, do soon, do later. Sometimes it seems like you do the soons and then all of a sudden it's now and then you get overwhelmed. But
Right. And that concept is actually something I don't think, I mean, it's been around the school PR circles for a while, because that's actually, I learned that from the great Erica Chandler, who I know you are familiar with, who's
yep.
another good friend in Mospra. But when I was, just coming up through NSPRA and had only been attending NSPRA for, a couple of years in terms of the national seminar, you can go to the national seminar and feel so overwhelmed because you go to all these great sessions and it's like, oh gosh, these people are doing such great things. And you want to take it back to your district and like do the things right away. And you want to do everything. And Erica had this great piece of advice, like one of my very first years. And now I think other people have stolen that piece of advice so many times because it's so good. And it's, on the, when you're sitting in the airport, heading back, or even on the plane ride home, like journal and say, okay, what, few things can I take away from this that is on my do now, do soon, do later list? And it's a way of just breaking those things down and making it not be so overwhelming and intimidating, and realizing that you're only one person, in my case, one person shop, and that you can't do everything at once. So it's breaking it down into those little chunks that makes it more feasible and realistic.
Yeah, we don't need more overwhelm in our world.
Sure.
And to talk about making things a little bit simpler, I know you are also part of my little community, the community at Social School for EDU. We have a membership group with about 400 schools right now. Can you just tell me how that program has helped you in your role?
Oh gosh, I call it a lifesaver, Andrea. I mean, I feel like I hope I've become like one of your biggest cheerleaders, because, or, that just, whenever anybody asks, I sing the praises of your group and this membership program, because it's really, I think that, in the role that we're in, and I kind of liken this to the same to what I felt like when I first found out about NSPRA and my state organization, SC NSPRA, when I first came on board with school PR. It's like we, even those of us that do have multi-people departments, you feel like you're on an island sometimes, and just that, there's nobody around you to, that might be going through what you're going through, or that can help, or that's been through a certain situation before. And so finding the connections that can provide that support and say, hey, don't reinvent the wheel. Look, I've got this template that I use here, you steal it, make it your own, those kind of things. And so your membership group is just, it's just a wealth of knowledge and, examples from people that have been through it. And then just all the webinars and support that you provide that just really, again, helps us when we're, we feel like we're the wearer of many hats and we're not an expert in everything. And so you've provided that support when we do need it.
We've got a great group, and Melissa, you're going to be really happy to hear this. So we were just talking at my because we do social media management for over 80 school districts. And we really started talking about the square versus, the Facebook size for graphics.
Yes.
But we don't really recommend using a lot of the heavy graphics on Instagram Grid. And
Right.
so we're actually going to transfer our squares into the 1.91 to 1 ratio, or a 4 to 5 ratio, so that it fits well on Facebook so that you don't have those extra sides by it.
You know that's like you're speaking to my heart, Andrea.
I know, I am.
It's just a
But
pet peeve of mine.
I know, and it's annoying, and they are always changing, but it's like I just recommend, a little bit more photo centric on the Instagram, at least on your grid or on your feed.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we can use those graphics, and sometimes those are even okay, even at that dimension, to pop up into stories because it's a little bit less formal, but it does look annoying. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you must
You
not do social media all the
gotta
time.
join the group if you don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, as we kind of close out, Melissa, you've shared so much. It's been awesome. Our time goes by way too fast. This is about our running, we usually run for a half an hour. So this is like a good discussion. But what would you say is your best social media tip?
Oh gosh. There's so many things, but I think when you and I first chatted about doing this podcast, what I try to remind my people that I manage every day is just to be social. I mean, that sounds so silly and maybe simplistic, but that's what social media is there for. It's there to engage your parents, engage your students and community and your employees, like everybody that's a follower. It's supposed to be social. And so if you're missing out on that, you're maybe missing missing it entirely. I mentioned a minute ago that my perspective had changed since I became a parent. And it did, because I remember when my daughter, who's now a fourth grader, was a kindergartner, and she loved school. I mean, she loves school, and she still loves school as a fourth grader, but getting her in the car after picking her up from school and saying, what'd you do at school today? What'd you learn? And even my child, who loves school, would say, we learned, we did this. And so you see it from that perspective of a parent that's like aching for anything from your child to tell you about their school day. And that's what social media can do. And that's what I try to remind my managers, and then also my principals and my school administrators, is that it provides that window into a classroom, into a school for the day, to let parents and the community and people that could support your schools, allow them that window to see what you're doing. And so you have to be social. So you have to invite them in. You have to, provide those great, instead of, boring, text and, things that are not engaging, give them those great pictures, or that, great glimpse of a teacher helping a student or something that makes it social. So I don't know that seems really simplistic, but it is, just be social with it.
Yes, tell those stories. So I love it. Well, now that everybody else may not want to run with us, Melissa, at this summer when we're in Seattle, but they may want to connect with you to
Yes.
ask questions. So what's the best way to stay connected to you?
Yes. So I am on Twitter, or I can't call it X. I just continue to call it Twitter. At least I hope I'm on Twitter. We had a recent, this is totally a first world problem, but we recently changed over to the iPhone 15 in my school district. And I've temporarily gotten locked out of my Twitter, but I am very active on it when I'm in it. So
Okay.
at TV Melissa is my handle. And then, just on email,
Yeah.
which is melissa.robinette@spart5.net.
Okay. And we'll make sure to put both of those in the show notes, and you can check out her social channels as well. You feel free to use her little story of we're in the kid business. Hopefully your leadership has the same mentality. I absolutely love that. And I look forward to just seeing you continue to grow and thrive. And it's been fun to watch you grow. I think you gave great advice today, where it's like, sometimes it can be overwhelming. You think you have to do all the things. And over 10 years, Melissa, you've been able to do a lot in your school district. You're such a blessing for them to be able to get all these stories out and beyond. Social media is one part, but you do a lot more. So thank you for everything you do.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, I
A-
really
abs-
enjoyed this today.
yeah, awesome. Well, everybody, we will be back here with another episode of the podcast. And until then, just keep telling those stories. Bye, Melissa.
Bye.